Well, Patrick Frazee, the Colorado man accused of killing his fiancée, Kelsey Berreth, is expected back in a Colorado courtroom today, where he'll find out if he'll be able to see some of the evidence that's being mounted against him. Now, prosecutors are arguing that if Frazee sees the arrest affidavit and the evidence, that could jeopardize their investigation. Meanwhile, yesterday we learned that an Idaho woman is being looked at for the suspected disposal of Kelsey Berreth's cell phone. All this while a judge ruled that Frazee's daughter would remain in the custody of Kelsey's mom, Cheryl. Let's bring in Bob Bianchi's former prosecutor, has been following this very closely. Let's talk about whether or not Frazee should see the arrest affidavit. Argue both sides. Why do prosecutors want to keep it sealed from him?
Well, typically these affidavits would be given as soon as is practical under the law. What the prosecutor is arguing is that the release of this information at this stage would compromise the investigation, potentially lead to the body, which has not yet been recovered, to be removed and placed somewhere else, and could put potential witnesses in danger, Mike. So they're asking the court for a relatively unusual process where they're saying we want this sealed, not indefinitely, but for the period of time so that those factors can be eliminated. The alternative to that argument is that a defense is entitled to the information as quickly as possible so they can start preparing for their case. And the judge is going to balance the arguments here and make a decision of whether the prosecutor's request to seal the information is appropriate.
What do you think? What argument do you think is going to win out here?
Well, if in fact they're going to say that it compromises an investigation, if I put myself in the place of a judge, and as a prosecutor who has actually done this, I have never had a court that went against my position when I argued that it would potentially endanger witnesses at this particular time or compromise an investigation and the potential destruction of evidence. I think if they make that argument and the judge believes it, the judge is going to give them a window of time to do what you need to do, but then get it over to the defense as quickly as possible so that the defendant's due process rights are protected.
Yeah, reportedly, the timeline, it could be a week. And then on January 29th, we believe there's going to be a preliminary hearing where more evidence is going to be unveiled. Do you like that timeline? Is that fair to all parties?
It's really hard to tell you, having investigated a lot of murder cases. A lot of times you're following up on a lot of loose ends. I think it's fair if the prosecutor indicates that that time period is sufficient to ameliorate or lessen the concerns that they currently have right now. But the judge is probably going to keep a short leash on prosecutors because, again, they want to make sure that the defendant has a right to a fair trial. But this does not necessarily at this stage compromise that right now. Eventually, they're going to get the information and the data and be able to properly prepare a defense.
Got it. Well, we'll see what the judge decides on that. Let's hit on the Idaho woman that's being investigated for getting rid of Kelsey Berreth's phone. How does that impact the Frazee investigation?
It's a huge development in the case. If the prosecutors can tie a woman who knows this defendant apparently for many, many years to the cell phone, well, the first question would be, was she actually involved in the murder itself? Or, two, was she involved in the cover-up by taking that phone, placing it in Idaho? Remember, Mike, there were text messages that were pinging off towers in Idaho where she was, the phone was contacting the employer saying, I'm not going to be there for a couple of weeks. So she was involved in that. The cops now have, the prosecutors now have a direct link to the defendant, to Frazee, and certainly they're going to try to flip that witness. But moreover, it clearly shows her phone, dead person, goes to Idaho, she knows him, major development for the prosecution.
You know, one other thing, looking at the, from what we know, the charging documents, that Frazee tried to find someone, this is their belief anyway, to kill Kelsey 3 times between September and November. And I'm sure we'll find out more as time goes on. But what are you seeing here? Are you seeing him approach the same person 3 times, 3 different people, or too early to tell?
It's hard to say whether or not it's one person 3 times or 3 separate people. But what is really relevant about that fact is it shows extraordinary premeditation. This is something that we did not know when they initially gave that conference. So when defense lawyers try to make an argument that it may have been heat of passion, which lessens the charge to manslaughter, or something that just developed at the last minute, this shows really purposeful, intentional conduct that the defendant could have walked away from for over a month or 2 months, but didn't do it. It shows extraordinary planning, and it really puts him in serious jeopardy.
Yeah, the timeline, according to these charging documents, that happened between September and November, and I believe that Kelsey was killed potentially Thanksgiving Day. All right, Bob, always appreciate your expertise. Thanks.
You got it, Mike. Thank you.